Vimalakirti's illness. The portrait of Vimalakirti is followed by the story of his illness, which begins in Chapter 2 and provides the main narrative framework for the rest of the sutra. The first sentence is the key, quote, "As such a skillful means, he gave the impression of being ill in his body." Close quote. This had the result that he was visited by numerous worthy lay people, kings, princes, Brahmins, householders, and various officials who all solicitously inquired about his welfare. When they visited him, he took the opportunity he had created to preach the Dharma to them in the form of a meditation on the body, which is a classic theme in Buddhism. His exposition stresses the impermanence of body and its susceptibility to suffering. By his own feigned illness, Vimalakirti was himself a visual demonstration of his teaching. He uses the standard similes. The body is like foam, like a bubble, like a mirage, like a dream, or an echo. Not only is it unstable, it is also unpleasant like a poisonous snake. One should take delight not in this perishing physical body, but in the Buddha body. He says the Buddha body is the Dharma body. He who wishes to attain the Buddha body and cut off the afflictions of all living beings should raise the thought of supreme, perfect enlightenment. The chapter concludes with the comment that Vimalakirti had expounded the Dharma in a manner appropriate to those who came to inquire about his sickness. Thus, the positive teaching which he gave about the Buddha body or the Dharma body is framed to fit over against the negative account of the physical body arising out of his supposed illness. This short exposition is thus a representative example of the correlational method of Buddha's teaching. The two subsequent chapters continue the plot of the narrative begun in Chapter 2, only now, instead of laymen going to call on Vimalakirti, we read of the perplexities into which the closest and leading disciples of the Buddha find themselves to be pitched. Chapter 3 begins with a fine irony, as Vimalakirti is supposed to say to himself that while he lies here in his feigned illness, the compassionate Buddha will surely not leave him to suffer alone. Not surprisingly, the Buddha reads his thoughts and plays the game by telling his disciples and bodhisattvas to go and visit the sick elder. It is a straight continuation of the skillful means set up in Chapter 2. One by one, the disciples demur, and to excuse themselves, they each tell their story of an encounter which they had already had with Vimalakirti, and which led to their extreme discomfiture. The principle which they have in common is that each time the disciple is shown as taking some aspect of the Buddha's teaching in a literal and pedestrian manner, which Vimalakirti then reinterprets in terms of transience and voidness. An example may be given in a little detail here, namely the case of Ananda, which is of special interest since it reflects the skillful means character of Vimalakirti's own illness. Ananda was standing at the entrance to the house of a rich Brahmin, bowl in hand, when Vimalakirti turned up and asked him what he was doing there. Ananda explained that the Buddha was feeling slightly ill, and that therefore he was trying to beg some milk for him. At this, Vimalakirti expressed great shock and told Ananda to stop at once. The body of the Tathagata was like a diamond, he said. How could it possibly be susceptible to illness? The Buddha body is freed from the conditioning of ordinary existence and does not suffer illness. Ananda should be careful not to bring the Buddha into disrepute. Not surprisingly, Ananda is perplexed at this. But fortunately for him, a voice is heard from the sky or space which affirms that Vimalakirti, who, after all, is just a householder, is correct in what he says. The Buddha behaves in this way because he has come out into the world in order to bring across and release living beings. Nevertheless, although what Vimalakirti says is right, says the voice from space, Ananda may take back some milk for the Buddha, discreetly, without feeling ashamed. The illness of the Buddha is acted out on the side of the unenlightened. but at the same time it provides the occasion for indicating the true character of a Buddha body. Kumarajiva does not here use the term skillful means of the Buddha's illness, though it would obviously be appropriate. Interestingly enough, the same story is quoted in the vast treatise on the great perfection of insight ascribed to Nagarjuna, and also translated by Kumarajiva. In this case, the Buddha's request to Ananda to fetch him some milk is explicitly declared by Vimalakirti to be a skillful means. It will be noted that the declaration that an activity of the Buddha is a skillful means does not imply that it should be suspended. Vimalakirti checks Ananda in order to bring him to the realization of what is going on, but the voice which confirms the correctness of what Vimalakirti says goes on to instruct Ananda to carry out his errand nevertheless. Vimalakirti's encounters with the other disciples all bear a similar message. He seems to strike at the root of the renunciation of the household life, of begging for alms, of meditation and of teaching, all taken in a very straightforward manner by the disciples in question, but reinterpreted in a contradictory way by Vimalakirti. Thus, to Shariputra, quote, meditation does not mean just sitting there. Meditation means showing neither body nor mind in the triple world. Meditation means not giving up the achievement of cessation, yet maintaining all forms of worldly dignity. Meditation means not discarding the Dharma of the way, while at the same time being active in the affairs of the common people. Close quote. In this way, one by one, many items of doctrine and practice from the central tradition of Buddhism are restated in terms of their emptiness and their original nirvanic quality. The logic of equality which flows from this, and which is typical of the Mahayana, leads to the contradictory equation of monkhood and laity, leaving the household life and being immersed in the world, of savior and saved, of future possibilities and latent states. The followers of the Buddha should follow their practices and give their teachings, but always with a view to the dismantlement from within. The rationale for this is stated in some detail in the dialogue between Vimalakirti and Manjushri, the only one of the Buddha's followers who did feel ready to call on the sick householder. This discussion links up the important Mahayana concepts of emptiness, insight, and skillful means.